So it's a company I don't think I've ever spoken about on here before. I don't think we've even mentioned it, but it's a company called Axsome Therapeutics. So it's it was for quite a long period at a late stage sort of stage three um, kind of area, phase three FDA kind of company. But recently, it's got a few drugs across the line, and I think it's a really interesting therapeutics company. I think it's got a really interesting pipeline of late stage drugs, but it's now also got some really interesting approved and patented drugs as well. The current portfolio, Steve, is three. They're potentially blockbuster drugs, a couple of them. I wouldn't go for all three of them being that, but they essentially are these three drugs: Auvelity, which is used in patients with major depressive disorder, which to you and me would be called clinical depression. They're also trying to get FDA approval for Auvelity to be used in things like ADHD, anxiety, and bipolar. There's about 21 million patients in the US at the moment with MDD. Obviously, that number gets a lot bigger when you start to expand the use cases. The second drug is called Sunosi, and it's a drug that helps people with narcolepsy. Some At the moment, it's licensed for obstructive sleep apnea and excessive daytime sleepiness. There's about 22 million people in the US with this condition as well, so plenty of scope for them to market for them to explore. I think the big one, Steve, is Simbravo. And it's the newest drug that was only approved last week. And this treats something that I actually suffer with, migraines. But it's not just me. There's about 39 million Americans that do so too. And the FDA are pretty impressed with this drug. It actually took them 2 years to get it approved because the FDA had all sorts of issues with it. They even looked into things like their manufacturing as well to make sure it's safe, because we don't often get painkiller drugs back on the market. We haven't had many for a long time. And I think is it the Sackler dynasty? It was the last time the Americans approved a painkiller, and that's why you have all these people, like all these zombies on the streets of America, addicted to opioid painkillers. Really interesting book on that called The Empire of Pain. If you want to read that, that's a very interesting take on it. But so look, given their track record of getting drugs approved, you might be surprised to learn that they've even got more drugs in the pipeline. So they've got a few in phase three. Two of them at the moment have got either the FDA's breakthrough therapy designation or orphan drug designation. These are just two FDA awards that speed up drug approval, or they grant additional protections. They grant things like tax credits and other incentives. So this new pipeline of drugs, and I've only taken the ones that are in phase three, but they target Alzheimer's, ADHD, MDD, which we spoke about before, clinical depression, binge eating, could do that one myself, Steve, narcolepsy, fibromyalgia, and shift work disorder, which I have no idea what that is, but that sounds interesting, something to Google. So just doing some really quick maths on the current sales of things in that kind of area, this late stage pipeline, if we tag that on and say, everything gets approved, alongside this other three drugs, you're looking at about 16.5 billion in peak sales value per annum. Now, obviously, that ignores everything. It's up to you to try and make that into a sensible number. So look, in terms of revenue, they're flying. On the quarter, sales are up 66%. They're now at 118.8 million. On full year, Steve, they're up 88% to 385.7 million. As you'd expect for a company that's experiencing growth like this, they're ramping up production, they're ramping up sales and marketing. They've essentially doubled in size in the last 12 months. And they're not doing this profitably yet. Lost to them just under $75 million last year, but the balance sheet looks really robust. 315 million in cash, only 180 million in debt. There's runway here to support this growth through to profitability by the looks of it. Not resting on the laurels either, Steve. With this increased amount of money coming through the business, they've doubled their R&D budget and added 30% to their SG&A as well. They're really striking while the iron is hot. At the moment, it's about 6 billion market cap. It's got 17 analysts covering the stock now, and it has had for a while. To be honest, the market has been really excited about this pipeline for a while with this new painkilling drug. It's only up about 40% in the last 5 years, despite the successes it's had. And this is because it's something Steve and I talk about all the time. The success was priced in. But I think from here, it could be ready to kick on, Steve. and I would be very, very, very interested in maybe taking a small portion of this company. It's in the capital incinerator. It's up 400% in there. I got it rather cheap after a kickback on an FDA approval on the painkilling drug, which to me just sounded like it was going to get approved. They just needed to submit some more info. They've done that. It's approved now. I'm interested to see where it goes next.
This seems very off-brand for you. I quite like this idea of. I mean, basically, what you appear to have worked out is a kind of asymmetric risk reward thing, right? Of kind of. So when we talk about pipelines and assessing them, fair to say it's not the core area of specialism for either of us. It's not the thing that we naturally think. Right, I have advantage in this. I'm going to go look at some pipelines because I can look at them better than other people can. But we're both kind of alert enough to the prospect of something obvious showing up, in, like historically Bristol Myers Squibb as a decent example. So when I look at this, I sort of think this is an interesting sort of balance here between wanting to think, okay, if anything goes right here, this could go a lot higher. If things go wrong, well, revenue's growing pretty fast. We're a 385.7 million on a six and a bit billion market cap. So it's not nothing, but it's it growing rapidly, and you will start cutting into that a fair bit. And good to see them kind of looking. You said they are not profitable yet. That's partly because they've got a large kind of investment and capital outlay business going on. Balance sheet you would want, therefore, to look okay in that situation. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens with some of these things. If you can get yourself a few free shots at something that that could go well, and well, needs all of them to kind of go wrong for this to not really work, it's very interesting to me. The thing around painkillers is particularly fascinating. Axsome has been attracting quite a bit of analyst attention, and I'm looking here, they generally seem to be pretty optimistic on this kind of thing. Whether any of these guys can read a pipeline any better than you can might be another question. So whether they actually add much to what you're saying, but you are in good company thinking that this is a firm that doesn't have the same issues that some of the big farmers do. They tend to be dividend stocks, and the issue for them is it's very hard to make any meaningful impression on growth, whether it's Merck or Pfizer or whoever. You really need to find something big to meaningfully grow your business, which is why they trade at low PE multiples. For a reason. 6.6 billion, no you don't. Something could grow you quite nicely with a breakthrough here, especially if it looks like it's progressing quite well. So where did this come onto your radar from, Steve?
I've known about this stock for about 5 years because I was looking into, at the time we were looking at Bristol Myers Squibb, I was looking into why there's no painkiller, why we don't get anything like paracetamol or ibuprofen, why there's no new versions of this that come around. And I think the answer to that is generally because what we have is quite sufficient and obviously very cheap and generic, and you can pick up a pack of paracetamols for about 40p from your local hazard, maybe even cheaper. But because I suffer with migraines, they don't touch the sides with me. It doesn't help me at all. So I was just looking to see if anybody had anything else, and I just stumbled across an analyst report on this company, and I added it to a watch list and just kept tabs on it, which happens with a lot of small caps. Really, I look at something that's a few $100 million or something like that, and I just think, well, I'll park that to one side and we'll have a think about that later down the line. Intercellular therapies as well was another one that has just been acquired by somebody for about six billion, I think, or something like that. Might even be more than that. And that's where I see Axsome ending up. That is I think will be the end goal. I think one of the big guys is going to look down this and go, right, Alzheimer's, ADHD, clinical depression, binge eating, narcolepsy, fibromyalgia, shift work disorder, and then the stuff that's already approved, and just going to go, well, we might as well have that in our stuff. There's no reason not to have that, and I would expect that it gets taken out at 30, 40, 50% premium. In the meantime, Axsome's doing all the right things to promote its growth and get these drugs marketed. So I I just really, I am really attracted to this as as an opportunity, and I have no ability to assess the pipeline, but at the end of the day, you've got to look at the quality of the R&D spend is about $30 million dollars a year, and they've got 3 drugs across the pipeline, through the pipeline onto the market, Steve, that are generating 300 million in revenue, or whatever it ended up being, 385 million of revenue. So you've got to be quite impressed with that. There's obviously something special about this pipeline, and if it continues, I think it's like you say, it's an asymmetric bet that you should come out the other side doing okay. I think the market has priced in over the last 5 years the expectation that a couple of these drugs, maybe 3 of these drugs, was going to hit the market, but I don't think they've priced in the real upside of it, and I think that's probably where we are today, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a pipeline that things 3, 5, 10 times its size would actually be quite happy with on their own here, and I do sort of think it's not a great time at the moment for pharmaceutical companies. So some of them could do with a win, and I guess there are some that could be looking to turn their stock price around. In general, acquiring is negative for the share price of the acquirer, but there's activists starting to show up in places like Pfizer at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if I think of them specifically, or I'm thinking of somewhere like Biogen that we've talked about many, many years ago that's had a difficult time with its own Alzheimer's drugs, which have been pretty good, but they've struggled to get them to market. And partly, you mentioned Alzheimer's as one of the things that Axsome has a treatment or potential treatment for. So that will be, I can see plenty of places that might like the look of this portfolio, and if they can find the cash to do it, then it could be worth taking a swing. Should we do one more?
I think it's Axsome's Alzheimer's drug that has the orphan drug designation from the FDA, so it's one of the ones that they're trying to quick through. Mm-hmm. I think it's called AXS-12, and I believe it's in phase 3, and at the end of phase 2, they found no adverse effects from it as well, which was obviously way above what other people are doing at the moment. So could be an interesting one for people to keep an eye on.
You've been watching a segment from the Playing FTSE show, brought to you in association with our favourite broker, Trading 212. For the full version of the show, check us out on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you open a new account with Trading 212 using the link in the description, there's a free fractional share in it for you. Just make sure that you use the code FTSE when you sign up. Terms and conditions apply, and do remember that when investing, your capital is at risk.